I found myself driving in the area that I used to use and just driving around. And there was no reason for me to be in that area. So looking back, it was like, did I want to see somebody that was using and then maybe join them? Or in my mind, I was like, oh no, I want people to see that I'm doing really well. But I really wasn't doing well, maybe on the outside, right? Manager at a sober house, you know, sponsoring all these women, doing the 12 steps, going to meetings, but I really wasn't doing the work internally, and I wasn't telling on myself. And I remember we had a gratitude meeting at my group. It was just after Christmas, and I went to the meeting, and then the person that I was dating at the time called me and told me he had relapsed. And my best thinking said, I'm going to go and save him. And I was in no place to do that. I should have asked maybe some of my guy friends to go and help him. And I started driving, and, you know, it talks about like the mental obsession, but there's also like a mental blank spot. I knew in that moment that I was going to pick up that night. And I thought I was just going to do one, which is funny when you say it out loud, but I really did think that. And then I was off to the races from that moment on.
Hi there. Welcome back, or welcome to Recovering Out Loud podcast, the show where we get real about mental health and addiction. I'm so glad you're here. If you or someone you love is struggling with drugs or alcohol, please reach out for help. Send me a message on all social media platforms at Recovering Out Loud Pod, or by email at recoveringoutloudpod@gmail.com. You are no longer alone. I went to a wedding last night and I'm just like really tired. I didn't, it was good. It was a high school reunion almost, because it was like all these people I went to high school with.
Oh, wow.
And so that can be kind of overwhelming sometimes. Yeah. But like it was most of my friends, which was nice. It's interesting to see. So I'm in my 30s and most of the people there were in their mid 30s, I would say. The amount of people that are still going like hard. And that's not to say that, see, my assumption is when I see people like that, I'm like, oh, they must be doing it all the time, right? Because that's how, you know, I do it. I'm assuming that's how you did it too. And that's not the case, right? Like those people are probably not going to go for another month and they're going to be fine.
Yeah.
And so I made a video about this morning, but one thing that really helps me, because I still get, and again, I'm early on again in recovery, but I still get those triggers, those thoughts of, what is it for me? It's like, oh, that looks fun, right? That looks fun.
Like fear of missing out.
Yeah, that would be nice. I remember when, and then like insert fun memory, right? Of doing like Coke, you know, I don't know. There's probably I probably have like a 4-minute, you know, memories of when it was fun, right? Those like 4-minute intervals. And then after that, it was just absolute hell. But one thing that really helps me is, excuse me, I just don't use like that, right? I don't drink like that. I'm still going today if I picked up last night, right? Of course. And then Sunday morning, I'm still going. And Monday morning, I'm still going. So that gives me comfort, right? But a lot of the time, and that's why I was looking forward to this today too, because like I have to talk about it, right? Like I can do all these things, I can pray, I can, all these tools that I was taught in recovery, but like if I keep it in here, that's how I go back every single time, right?
Absolutely.
So thanks for coming down, Allison. I appreciate it. Why don't you start with, tell us a little bit about yourself and what you do for work.
Okay, so I'm Allison. I've been in recovery for going on 7 years. I've worked at Addiction Rehab Toronto going on 5 years. Before that, my life looked a lot different. Active use was a really long time. I'd say about 16 or 17 years I was using hard drugs. At the beginning, I mean, when I was 16, 17, it was fun. I can honestly say that. And then, you know, at about 18, 19 years old, it started to become problematic. And my life just went downhill. I wasn't employable. I couldn't keep a job. I would go to multiple different schools and get different degrees for things and never be able to stick to anything. And then in 2016, I went to my 5th treatment center by that time, and I was 34 years old. And from there, I stayed there 75 days. And then from there, I went to a sober living. And that's kind of where my recovery kind of took off. I actually started to have hope and know that maybe I could do this. You know, before that, I was always the type of person that would go to a treatment center. I would get into trouble. My family would either give me a choice. It was like court-ordered treatment centers or go to jail, essentially. And so I picked the nice treatment centers. And but after I would leave the treatment center, I wouldn't have a solution. And I didn't hear about the 12 steps too much and meetings and that kind of stuff. So I just would go back to my old life, what I knew best. I hung around some pretty dangerous people. I got myself into some pretty dangerous situations at a young age. Throughout my 20s, it was, really hard drugs, and it was terrible. 28, I got pregnant and I had my daughter. And I mean, I was sober, but it wasn't recovery. It was more dry. And then when she was about 3, I went back to that life. And it was a long road to get here. And so when I went to that treatment center, and then I went to a sober living, it was a private sober living. And I stayed there for almost a year, a little bit over a year, I think. And in that time, I really learned what recovery was. I got a sponsor. I worked the 12 steps. I went to lots of meetings, started sponsoring women. And when it was time for me to move out on my own, I started to work at the sober house. I just started off on the weekends, and then I moved to doing throughout the week, and then I started to manage the house. So at about 2.5 years, they talk about unmanageability, right? When you're not using, and it comes back into your life if you're not working a solid program, and that's kind of what happened to me. So I stopped going to meetings. I stopped working with women. I was working way too many hours. I was helping my mother because she fell and she fractured her leg, and like these are all excuses, really. And eventually I ended up picking up again at about just shy of 3 years, and it was really bad. It was about 2.5, 3 months, but it was terrible. I almost died a couple times. Somebody saved my life. I was passed out in a bathtub, and somebody saved my life. And so I went back to the same treatment center. My sister picked me up from a pretty dangerous area with a friend of mine that's in the program, and I went back to treatment, and I stayed there for 45 days, and I don't know, something shifted, and I knew the things that I needed to do, and I knew the things that I needed to not do. And so the last 6.5, pretty much 6.5 years, I've just been really focusing on my career, my recovery, my daughter, my relationships, my family. I have a really big family. I have 3 sisters. I have 7 nieces and nephews. Sunday lunches at my family's house is loud, and lots of kids running around. And sometimes I have to pinch myself, because the life that I was living on the streets, like I was actually driving on the way down here. And it was like by all the different areas that I used to, like, you could say I lived, but really it was just, kind of using and being on the streets. And so, then I went from the sober living, working there, and then he called me back after I got sober again, and he asked me if I wanted my job back. And so I started working there for about 6 months, and I just wanted something a little bit more. So during COVID, I went back to school, and I graduated with honors, which was pretty incredible for a person like me. and I started doing my placement at Addiction Rehab Toronto. And I would say that that's just kind of where I kind of fell into the field because of my lived experience. I think that it's such a special place to work. I absolutely love everybody that I work with. My bosses are very supportive. I met you through art, and I get to wake up every day and I get to go to a job that I absolutely love. Sometimes it can be a little bit overwhelming, a little bit stressful, but I think that today I'm able to handle that stress much better because of my recovery. So now I do intake. So I went from working as a counselor. I also do counseling as well, but my primary role is intake counselor. Yeah. And I absolutely love that role because I get to see them come into the doors and then I get to see them when they're leaving.
Yeah, that's what I was going to ask you is like, you get to see this, these shells of human beings come in. And I remember every time I have a picture from one of my intakes that I will never delete because it brings me back to that feeling of like utter defeat and my hair's all over the place and it looked like I hadn't showered in a long time, but I'll never forget that walking back. Like I've been to 3 and walking into all 3 treatment centers, like that's a memory burned into my brain. And for like when I'm at a wedding last night, I really pull up those memories, right? Of like, where does it lead me, right? Back into that door where I can't even speak. I don't even know who I am anymore. I'm just not myself, right? Completely. So that's an interesting perspective that you have there. I want to go back to so at 2.5 years when you went back out, because I can relate to that. I went back out after having years as well. Do you remember what sort of was going through your mind when that, because in my experience, relapse doesn't just happen overnight, right? There's like a lot of planning, a lot of thoughts, a lot of guilt and shame about the thoughts. Do you remember like what that thought process was like before you picked up again?
I don't have the greatest memory, and but I do remember the moments leading up to it. So I had a sponsor and she would tell me, you're not doing the inventories. It's like, like checking in at the end of the night. You're not coming to meetings. I started a meeting in my area. I wasn't going to the meetings. I started to concentrate on my relationship at the time, and all of these things. And I was really drained, and I was working too much, and all this unmanageability without drugs and alcohol. And I remember, I had a prayer meditation room in my condo. I stopped praying, stopped meditating. I stopped talking about it. And what's interesting is I'm not much of a drink. Like I drink alcoholically, but drinking is not really my thing. But I had a reservation about drinking and I didn't tell anybody about it. I found myself, I was telling my friend this story the other day. I found myself driving in the area that I used to use and just driving around. And there was no reason for me to be in that area. So looking back, it was like, did I want to see somebody that was using and then maybe join them? Or in my mind, I was like, oh no, I want people to see that I'm doing really well. But I really wasn't doing well, maybe on the outside, right? Manager to sober house, sponsoring all these women, doing the 12 steps, going to meetings, but I really wasn't doing the work internally and I wasn't telling on myself. And I remember we had a gratitude meeting at my group. It was just after Christmas. And I went to the meeting, and then the person that I was dating at the time called me and told me he had relapsed. And my best thinking said, I'm going to go and save him. And I was in no place to do that. I should have asked maybe some of my guy friends to go and help him. But, and I started driving, and, it talks about like the mental obsession, but there's also like a mental blank spot. I knew in that moment that I was going to pick up that night. And I thought I was just going to do one, which is funny when you say it out loud, but I really did think that. And then I was off to the races from that moment on.
Yeah, that's interesting. It's almost like your brain starts to look for excuses to jump back into that life. And you're like constantly scanning the area. That's interesting that you drove around And then, yeah, I can relate to like for me, it was the ADHD medication. It was like, I had the right thought in my mind. And you mentioned telling on yourself. That is like, I try to preach that so often with guys that I work with and on this podcast as well. Every time I relapsed, it was that, it was like, I have this idea, I'm going to hold it back here and it's just going to keep getting bigger and bigger until eventually it leads to action. Right. So being an intake counselor at Addiction Rehab Toronto, you see a lot of people come in. What would you say is like the number one people in your opinion that like I never like saying fail because it's not failure at all, but that don't kind of get the recovery thing? Like what do you think the biggest reason is when they leave treatment?
A lot of the time it's the continuum of care. You can come into treatment and you can be there 30, 60, 90 days, which is great. And it's a beginning. But if you leave treatment and you just go back to exactly what you were doing before, you're not going to be able to sustain recovery. And so I often say, you know, if it's not 12 steps, then maybe look into smart recovery or something needs to change. You know, some people need a little bit of extra support, and then sober living is the next option. I didn't go back to sober living on my after my relapse, but I do truly believe that if I didn't go to that sober living initially in 2016, I don't think that I would be sober today. I really needed to learn how to live outside of treatment, and having that extra support was crucial.
Yeah.
Was absolutely crucial.
Yeah. And it's a good point too, because, you know, for a long time when I came back from my relapse, there was these thoughts of like, oh, I lost it all. Right. But that's a prime example of tools that were built into your brain that you were able to later go back, pick up on, right. And bring back out and use again. So you don't lose any of that time. You don't lose those tools that you're taught in recovery. And so, yeah, I did the sober living thing too. I found that for me, the biggest help at any treatment center I've ever been to was like just listening to what they told me to do. Right. And when I work with people now that are getting into treatment, I always, you know, it's the mom's calling and it's the fifth treatment center, right? What's going to be different this time? And I ask them sometimes, I'm like, what do you think the missing piece is, right? Like, did you listen to every single thing the counselor said to do, right?
Yeah.
And it's funny that I'm saying this out loud because in my last treatment center, they recommended that I extend to 60 days. And, you know, I had 8 years of recovery and I was like, I know what I'm doing. You know what I mean? And it's like that utter deflation of ego had to take place again.
Absolutely.
And it wasn't until I said it out loud that I'm a defiant alcoholic and addict that something clicked for me, where I was able to accept the fact, even still looking back, my brain will go, yeah, you know, you probably could have got away with 30, right? And it's like, no, dude, like you needed to listen, and it doesn't matter what it looked like. You needed to listen to what other people were saying, right? And then just apply it in your life.
Yeah, like taking direction and remaining teachable and being humble.
Yeah.
I've worked with clients before where they're like, I know. I'm like, no, you don't.
That's a dangerous word.
Phrase. Because I used to say it myself. And I know that I need to be able to listen to somebody that came before me that knows what they're doing, and I need to follow direction because my thinking and my way of life was not working.
Yeah, it's so true. You're a spiritual person, right? I know that from you. What does faith, spirituality mean to you, and why do you think it's important in recovery?
So, you know, in the big book, it says self-will run riot. So if I'm living on my self-will, I'll get myself into trouble every time. And so when I started the program, I was a bit skeptical with spirituality, with the word God and those kind of things. And, you know, throughout the years of recovery, sometimes I'm very spiritual, and then sometimes I fall off the beam a little bit, and I have to get myself back to it. I think that, you know, me driving the bus is not a good idea. I'm not a good driver in a sense. Yeah. And so spirituality looks like, you know, turning my thoughts and my actions over to the care of God or whatever I believe in, instead of my thoughts and actions. So, and it's not always just to do with drugs and alcohol. It's to do with, should I go to this place, or should I hang out with these people, or, do I go to this event? Like I kind of like, have something to talk to and be directed by, because, for such a long time, my plans and ideas, they get me into trouble, and get me into places where I don't want to be. And my life today is so beautiful. It's a miracle, because I couldn't go like 20 minutes without picking up. It was really bad. I when I went into treatment in 2016, I was a little over 100 pounds, and I was dying, from the inside and out. I needed spirituality. I needed something to help guide me. And, even just doing prayer and meditation, I feel like when I pray, I'm asking for direction. And when I meditate, I'm listening for the answers.
What does meditation look like to you? How do you tell someone to meditate? I always struggled with that one. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So my mind sometimes goes like a million miles a minute. So I like guided meditations personally.
Yeah.
I'm not very good with sitting still with just quiet, or maybe even a little bit of music in the background. I like something that's guiding me. Sometimes I'll just use the Calm app and just ask for guided meditation on stress, or guided meditation on faith, or guided meditation on anxiety, whatever I'm feeling in that moment. And I just try and sit still in the morning before I get to work, because I like to be grounded and kind of just feeling calm when I get to work. And then also at nighttime, after I write out my inventory, I send it to my sponsor. She's fantastic. I really love working with her. And then I just finish it off with a meditation, and I usually fall asleep.
So you do it at night then. Mm-hmm. Interesting. Yeah. Yeah. I find that meditation is one of those things where it's like, there's no doing it right. It's just doing it or not doing it. And, that's the struggle for me is just doing it. Right. It's starting to do it, building a routine around it. And then, yeah, to your point, when I do it, I'm much more calm. I don't react to situations. I don't buy things on Amazon as much, right? Like I can kind of catch myself and have this self-awareness when, for example, last night, these feelings are coming up and we're reminiscing about old times, and you start getting some people, as I'm sure you've had, where you see old friends and they're telling you how good you're doing and this stuff. And I don't know about you, but I really hate compliments. Like I really struggle. And I know that it's something to work on, where it's like, no, this person they mean it. And because that's my thing, is like, oh, you're lying, right? Or because I don't believe it myself, right? And so that it takes work, but I'm able to stop in those moments and feel my body reacting to whatever the situation is happening, and then just relate it back to, again, I don't drink like that, I don't use like that, I'm gonna be okay. And and then you wake up this morning and every single time you wake up and you're like, man, you almost can't believe that you had those thoughts again, because what was I thinking, right? And then but you just laugh at it too. You don't beat yourself up about it, and you're like, I'm an addict, and that's it. It's just more proof that I don't need, but I get it anyways, right?
And working at Addiction Rehab Toronto, seeing people come in broken, essentially, it reminds me of when I walked into treatment multiple times. And just, in the big book where it says incomprehensible demoralization, like that's how I felt every single time. Yeah. And, the snowball of lies when I was relapsing, and, lying to my boss and telling him I had laryngitis when I was using, and that kind of stuff that doesn't serve me today. I don't need to live that life today.
Yeah. What are you seeing on the intake side in terms of substances coming out? Are you seeing a lot of gambling yet? I keep thinking about this because I'm getting some phone calls about gambling. Now that it's legal in Ontario, and it's a really dangerous one, right? Because a lot of people it doesn't. I had a friend in last year, actually, right before my last relapse. I didn't realize how much of an impact this had. He actually took his own life, and we don't know exactly why, but some people believe that there was a little bit of that going on. And, if you read about the stats, I think one of the number one reasons, and I'm going to mess this up, but one of the number one reasons young males are committing suicide or taking their own lives is because of gambling debt. And it's a serious problem that's going to come, right? It's like an epidemic that's on the rise, definitely in the States as well. So what are you seeing in terms of substances? Is it a lot of opiates? Is it like, what's the majority of people coming in with?
I would say primarily it's a lot of alcoholics, a lot of crack cocaine and opiates, but there are some gambling addicts. And I have personal experience with, I was married to somebody that was a gambling addict. And he it's really bad. It creates the depression, the anxiety, and it is, if you look at stats, it's a high suicide rate, just because it's pretty much the same as substances except for gambling. You can't stop, and it's really sad. It's really sad, and it's hard to detect because it's not necessarily something that's visual when you're using. You can kind of tell when somebody's on drugs, but not so with the gambling addict. So it's pretty sad. It's and we've seen it. We've seen it at Art, people coming in with gambling addictions.
And is it the same kind of treatment approach that we take to that? Like, I'm not really up to date on how do you treat gambling?
Yeah. So there are 12-step meetings that you can go to, GA. And they work the 12 steps, maybe not in treatment, but they've worked the 12 steps in different fellowships. And, it's the same sort of idea, except for, when we have the mental obsession with drugs and alcohol, they have the mental obsession to place a bet.
Yeah. And it's very similar because I have some personal experience with gambling, in my addiction as well, where it's like you're chasing that first win, right? And it's the same as, I'm chasing that first high, that first line that the dopamine brought me, and it's never the same, right? And then you're constantly chasing it, and you get in a bigger hole, and then you need to use more and gamble more or whatever. So there's a lot of similarities, I think. What is the best piece of advice, or some of the best advice you got when you were coming into recovery, or this time around, from people?
So it was interesting when I went back to treatment. Some people, because a lot of the counselors knew me because I was there 3 years prior, and some of the clients were asking me, about having 3 years and that kind of stuff, and I just told them I'm just starting fresh, just like you, because obviously I got something wrong along the way. I don't lose the experience of having those 3 years and the people that I met, but I wanted to remain humble and teachable in that moment. Just being back in recovery, I think that the importance of really staying in the moment and working on, having that inventory at night has been crucial for me. I think because if I just kind of leave things, resentments, and they build up, eventually, I'm going to end up picking up as a result of it. So I need to always stay current with some things that have been bothering me, and just looking at, how I treat people and my behaviors and that kind of stuff. Because if I start being short with people, start going back to selfishness, resentments, and that kind of stuff, I know that that's a telltale sign that I'm going down the wrong path again.
Yeah, it's interesting you bring that up, because that's one of mine too, where I start getting short with people, and it's this it's kind of like this grumpiness. I actually woke up this morning feeling that, and something that's been helping me a lot, I started doing these free writing journals every morning because I read about it somewhere. So now, no matter what, and I don't want to do it a lot of the time, but first thing I do when I wake up after I pray is I write 3 pages of just like whatever's on my mind. And that's been extremely helpful. I actually got it from a woman who is sober. She wrote a book about the creative process and like writing, and she's a writer, and she uses her recovery tools to like help artists that are, you know, have what writer's block or whatever. And so I'm reading this book, and she talks about morning pages, it's called, where every morning you write out 3 pages no matter what. And I'm finding that it really helps me. Like, I don't want to do it a lot of the time, but it's a form of prayer. It's a form of meditation after I've already said my typical prayers. And it's amazing. Like, it honestly went away. Like, within probably half an hour of when I woke up this morning, I was writing about it out. And then, you know, my wife she woke before me this morning, which never happens. But I told her, I was like, I feel grumpy. I feel short. I feel angry. And within half an hour, like, you know, we're having a conversation again, and it's kind of gone. Right. So I can't stress enough to people how important it is to just get it out, whatever that looks like. Right.
Even I think what's beneficial too is having a gratitude journal. I feel like if I'm looking at what I'm grateful for today, then it's really hard for me to be in a bad mood, because there's so many things in my life to be grateful for. I have my family back. I have a beautiful relationship with my daughter. I have a beautiful relationship with my partner and his daughter, and my family. You know, they trust me again. It's pretty sad, but you know, they stopped setting a place at the table for me because I just never showed up. I missed out on so many things in active addiction, and now it's just like normal for me to be sober. Like they don't remember. Like, I'm sure they remember, but it's been a while since they've seen me that way, that it's just kind of second nature for me to show up and, you know, take care of their kids and that kind of stuff. Right.
Yeah, it's amazing. You start to replace all the bad memories with better ones. Right. And it takes time. And I've come to realize too, luckily I've had everyone in my life come back as well. It does take time, and some people they're not coming back, right? Some people we've really done some damage, and we need to accept that everyone has their own healing journey, and maybe their life is better without me, right? That's like another way to look at it too. What's something that you're currently working on right now personally?
That's a good question. So I've been, you know, trying to focus more on, you know, spending more time with my daughter. I think that it's very important. She's 16, and she really needs me. And also I'm quite busy at work too, right? So it's like I'm a bit of a homebody. So I, you know, during the week I go to meetings, I go home, I just hang out at my house. I do some therapy sessions at nighttime, spend time with her, and just try and keep it simple. I also love to travel, and some people ask me, you know, how do you travel and how do you go to these all-inclusive resorts and not drink or do anything else? But my memories are pretty much all attached to recovery. I only traveled since I've been in recovery. I think I've gone on 2 trips where I was in active use. One when I was 18 or 19, and once with a family trip, and I was drinking. Other than that, I've traveled to so many different places, but I've been in recovery doing that. So I just absolutely love it. I just got back from a Mediterranean cruise. That was
nice.
Absolutely beautiful. I don't know, it's just kind of my happy place to be around like an ocean and seeing the world and different things, because, you know, being confined to a room and being in paranoia is not fun.
Yeah.
So
it gets old pretty quick.
Yeah.
You just reminded me of, I remember, because there's a lot of firsts in recovery, right? And when people ask me that too, or they ask you, I don't think they really understand that it's like you've done it a lot, where it's like it at one point it wasn't easy, right? Like it's gotten easier because you do it a lot more. And so first wedding, first all-inclusive, that was a big one for me. And you remind me of a time when I went to Jamaica for 2 weeks, which was way too much time on a resort, to be honest, because we were like stuck in the first world problems. Anyways, so we were there, and I remember being on the beach, and there was like 4 or 5 people that were younger than me, and they were like funneling on the beach. And I'll never forget this. They brought it right up to my face and were like, you know, you got to do one. And that was one of the hardest moments I've ever been through in recovery, right? Where it's like you're in a place no one would know, right? You can all these thoughts are going through your mind. You can get back to recovery when you get home, and so I remember vividly calling my sponsor while I was on that vacation after, and telling him about it. And, I think that saved my life, because in the moment, you kind of forget, right? You forget that you have to go and pick up the pieces after, and you have to live with your addict self again, right? No one else is coming to save you after.
Yeah, I was thinking when you were talking that I remember I got out of treatment. I was about 4 months sober. I went to Bahamas with my family and my daughter. And then the fall that year, I was about 8 months sober. And my sponsor at the time, Nafisha, we went to Mexico together. And so I just kind of got used to being in recovery and going on these trips. And then, traveling with my sister, traveling with my daughter, traveling with friends. And then last year we went on a recovery trip to Mexico. And we're going again.
You're going to another one?
Yeah, we're going again in March. So I feel like, it's a good mixture of family and then also recovery trips as well.
Yeah, it's beautiful. How, so when life happens, and things happen in recovery to you, and how would you say that you navigate through those tough times when everything seems to be going wrong or not in your favor? How do you navigate through that?
So I think that having people, the supportive people, and really talking about it is so important. I have some really fantastic friends in recovery, ranging from, 25, 26 years to, a couple years, and they know me well. I have some friends that I've known that I lived with in sober living that are still sober, and we're on this journey together. So they know me the best. And I also have a couple normie friends that I can talk to about things, but I find that reaching out and just telling them how I'm feeling, also staying connected to my sponsor and my spirituality. I think that that's kind of what helps me when I'm feeling those certain low times.
Yeah. I mean, for me right now, things are good. Everything is working out as it should. I have a problem with expectations. That's my thing right now, where it's like, this podcast used to be a lot more, I don't know, I would say easy to get my head around doing, right? All the work around it. And lately I've been kind of just thinking like, it's starting to feel more like a job, right? And I've come to the realization that it's solely because, and this is like a lot of things in my life, I have an expectation attached to it. It's like, I'm at a point now where I'm not the expectation. I'm not getting what I thought I wanted to get out of it, right? Whether it's the amount of listeners or money from it or whatever. And it all comes back to like, I have this expectation which is directly proportionate to my level of acceptance. So what does it say? My serenity is directly inversely proportional to my level of expectations, right? So the higher my expectations are, the lower my serenity is in all scenarios. And I have to remind myself, I was like, dude, you did this to just stay sober and hopefully help one other person, and you're achieving that, right? So
absolutely,
shut up.
Yeah, it's a beautiful thing that you're doing. I think that it can help somebody that's watching it, and maybe they can relate to somebody that's on here. And we can't do this alone. That's the main thing. And I remember after I had my relapse, so many people reached out to me. So many people showed up at my door. Friends in recovery that didn't give up on me, didn't turn their back on me. When I was using, they wouldn't necessarily give me money, but they would buy food for me and stuff like that. And I don't forget that. And that's very important, because we can't do this alone.
Yeah, the asking for money is that's a good one. Enabling, right?
Yeah.
If you could go back, I like asking this. Somebody asked me this question once, and I hated it at first, but now I really like it. It's if you could go back and change your life to take like a life of a normal drinker instead of an addict, or a normal user instead of an addict, would you take it?
So that's, I used to think that I would. I used to think that if there was no consequences, would I still continue that lifestyle? And today I would say no. I would rather um, be, have the lived experience. I wouldn't have the career I have. I wouldn't have the people in my life. I don't think that I would have the partner that I have in my life. I don't think I would have any of these things because, I met so many incredible people in recovery that we wouldn't have crossed their paths with each other, right?
Yeah.
So I love my life today, and I'm grateful for what I've been through, because when I'm doing intakes and somebody asks me like, do you understand addiction, and I tell them a little bit, right? So it makes them feel more comfortable, and they're like, oh wow, and I tell them like a lot of our counselors have lived experience. They can understand what you've gone through, and they can empathize with you. And I'm also a mother, so I can understand the parent side of things, where what I put my family through, and I see the parents' faces, and just they just feel they look lost and broken because of what we put them through, right?
Yeah. I know it's like, I don't think I would have had the reason, I don't want to say access to the toolkit that I have today, because it's available to anybody, but I wouldn't have had the reason to get the toolkit that I have. And yeah, things have happened in my life where I don't know if they would have happened if I hadn't, hit some sort of rock bottom, right? And there's a lot of growth that comes after destruction, right? It breeds a lot of creation. I'm stealing that from a Red Hot Chili Peppers song, I think. Destruction leads to a very rough road, but it also breeds creation, right? And I love that quote. And the lead singer is also in recovery as well, so it's a beautiful thing.
You have to be able to learn from the experiences as well. I think in the big book it says it might be worth a bad case of jitters if you get a full knowledge of your condition. So as long as you can learn from the experiences, and you can grow from them, I feel like anything that I've been through, if it's been really challenging, that's where I've grown the most in recovery. I got married in recovery. I got divorced in recovery. I went through a pretty dark time through that relationship, and I came out of it a stronger person as a result of it. And looking back at my life in active use, there's some things that I went through, and I feel like I kind of put myself in those dangerous situations, right? So I think that I can better be prepared to help someone.
Yeah, it's like this sort of unique gift, right, that we can offer to others. And as I'm sure you can attest, addiction is not going anywhere, right? It's getting worse. And I found it interesting too that there's, with all the drugs that are out now, and a lot of you see the data that a lot less people are drinking now, right? That it's I still talk to a lot of alcoholics too, where it's like drugs are not their problem at all. And I find that really interesting, right? That it's like, let me ask you this, and maybe, I don't know if there's any science behind this or anything, and maybe your opinion on what do you think makes somebody a stimulant user versus an alcohol or depressant user? Like, what do you think the difference is? I've always been a stimulant guy. I never liked being depressed. What do you think the difference is between the two?
That's a good question. For me, I was both, right? I use stimulants, and then I use downers as well, right? So, but I think that once you get comfortable with a certain substance and you like the effect produced by it, then it just becomes your failed solution, but you think it's your solution at the time. So a lot of drinkers, I talk to a lot of alcoholics, and they're under the impression that because it's legal, it's more acceptable, and it's not so bad. Sometimes I'll even say, is there any other substances when I'm doing an intake? Or if I say drugs, and they're like, oh no, I don't do drugs, but alcohol is a drug. So it's interesting to see that they kind of separate the two. And I think that it just becomes preference and what you're used to.
Yeah. And that's, I would assume that that's the same with weed now too, right? Where it's like, that's interesting. Yeah. It's like this sort of justification that you're okay, right? Everyone else is doing it. I don't think I was ever to make that justification because people are not socially using cocaine. Actually, maybe they are. But,
not me.
If you walk around and I would say most people aren't using socially accepted use of cocaine or any drugs like that. But that's an interesting distinction. I never thought about that. Okay, let's wrap it up with this. If you could say something to your younger addicted self today, what would you say?
Very good question. I think that I would ask my younger self to listen and try and follow a little more direction in life. And sometimes I look back. I try not to have regrets, but I look back and I say, I wish maybe I was a little bit younger getting into recovery. There's some things that, maybe because I'm a little bit older, I can't necessarily have or accomplish. Maybe I would have had more kids and stuff like that, right? So I think that, maybe I would say to my younger self, try and get your stuff together at a little bit of a younger age.
Yeah, that going against that defiance, right? I think that's the crux of it all, really. And like even today, it's just to stay sober. It's going against that, better judgment in quotations that I think I know what's best for me. And you said it perfectly. The best answer, like my biggest problem today is I'm right? But it comes out in the form of, yeah, I know. And that's such a good way to put it. It's like anytime I'm saying, yeah, I know, that's red flag, huge red flag. Yeah. Right? Thanks so much for coming down, Allison. I appreciate it.
Thank you for having me.
Thanks for listening. Please help us grow the channel and like, share, and subscribe for more content. The discussions and stories shared on this podcast are for informational and motivational purposes only. This content is not a substitute for professional medical advice, addiction treatment, or therapy. If you or someone you know is struggling with addiction, please consult a licensed physician, addiction specialist, or mental health professional. You are no longer alone.